you can't always do what's popular and what's right at the same time. So if you have a passion, just something that you know in your heart to be right, then you have an obligation to yourself to pursue that, no matter the cost, no matter the criticism, because you can't live your life by universal popularity. You know, you can't get everyone to like you.
Today, I'm chatting with Project Consent's founder and CEO, Sara Li. Project Consent is a nonprofit against sexual assault that Sara started at age 17. She also hosts a weekly podcast, OMFG Sara. I'm really excited for you to hear Sara's story, so without further ado, let's jump into it. Here's my conversation with Sara Li. All right, I'm here with my friend Sara Li. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for being here. So, Sara, I've been following along with you and your work for probably about a year now, and I know there are a number of people out there who know you and are following your work as well, but for those who may be hearing from you for the first time, who are you?
For starters, I am a junior at the University of Kansas. I'm studying strategic communication through the journalism school and with a minor in creative writing. But outside of my title as a student, I'm also the founder and the CEO of Project Consent, which is a nonprofit that I started when I was 17 to raise awareness about sexual assault and to take action against it. I also have my own media company, and I'm now launching it into a podcast. So that's very exciting.
That's super cool. Dang. So still in college. You said you're a senior? Junior. Dang. Mm-hmm. And so you started Project Consent at age 17. I started Car With No Poetry at 22. So, still young, still don't have it all figured out. But,
right.
Why did you feel that this was an idea that you had to follow through on?
When I was 17, I wanted to raise awareness about sexual assault, or rather, I wanted somebody to raise awareness about sexual assault.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. No one was talking about it. It was still it was being swept under the rug. And I kind of got to the point where I was like, if somebody has to start a conversation about what is consent and what is rape culture and like how to support survivors, and I might have to be the one to start it. And so it was kind of a challenge that I took on. And I didn't really have like a game plan. I didn't jump into this with like a map of how I'm going to do everything. It was more like, I have this passion. This is something that I really want to do something about. So I'm just going to dive right in and then see where it takes me.
Yeah. And why was kind of raising awareness about sexual assault and human trafficking something that, you became passionate about or, were willing to begin speaking up on?
Well, I had gone through an experience when I was younger. So, it kind of, to take from that, it's, when something bad happens to you, you want to prevent it from happening to anyone else.
Yeah. That's super powerful. And so through Project Consent, what is the main story that you're seeking to tell?
There's a few. I want to say the main one that I personally, the foundation Project Consent to me is changing the narrative. We have this culture that very much does perpetuate sexual assault and sexual harassment, et cetera. And I want to rewrite that narrative to where we don't support that kind of violence, where we do support survivors instead. So it's just a whole idea that we can take something that's harmful and terrible and awful and we can change it to something better, because as informed citizens, it's completely up to us how we treat each other. And if we get enough people aware of the situation, that we can change micro behavior and eventually it'll just change the culture.
Yeah, I love that. And what were some of the challenges? I'm sure like the road to starting Project Consent and even some of the initial responses you got to it, I'm sure probably weren't, there are challenging times with that. So what were some of the challenges that you faced in starting Project Consent?
Absolutely. Well, I was 17 at the time, so I had just absolutely no idea how to run a nonprofit. And I had zero funding. I had like zero business expertise. So kind of figuring that out was extremely difficult. And for the first year of Project Consent, we were constantly like under budget. So it takes money to keep a company running. It takes money to advertise what we're doing, and just scraping the bottom of the barrel for that kind of funding is, to this day, it's still kind of a challenge for us. And then obviously, with any kind of social movement, social project, you're going to get a lot of backlash because we already have this culture and some people don't want to change. Some people don't want to support survivors. And it's very difficult knowing that, especially we live in a society where, with the internet, as great and powerful as it is, unfortunately, it does give people a lot of access to, kind of write terrible things. So I would say on like a daily basis, we receive at least, at the very minimum, like 5 hateful messages from people around the world on the internet. Wow. Email it to us, comment on our Instagram, whatever. But I think over the years, you kind of get used to it because it just shows that there's so much work out there still to be done. And if people are still fighting this, then we still have so much progress that needs to be made. And, I think somebody needs to stand up to them. I think somebody needs to stand up to rape culture. And whether that be us or some other organization, action needs to be taken. And no amount of hateful feedback, negativity will ever stop us from doing what we're doing.
Yeah. And, how does to be able to say something like that, I'm sure that takes practice. It takes some level of resilience to be able to say, yeah, we're going to take this backlash, but we're not going to stop. And so what would you say to someone who, whether they're starting a project or a business, or maybe it's just something they're doing creatively or something that they're trying to start doing, what would you say to them as some of that negativity or fear gets in the way? What has helped you in being able to overcome some of those things?
You can't always do what's popular and what's right at the same time. So if you have a passion, just something that you know in your heart to be right, then you have an obligation to yourself to pursue that, no matter the cost, no matter the criticism, because you can't live your life by universal popularity. You can't get everyone to like you. So like you said, it's a matter of mentally training yourself to accept criticism and to know what is constructive and what is just hateful trolling. And pushing past that kind of backlash is really half the battle. I would argue that it's more important than people think it is to be able to tune out the haters and to focus on the calling that is in front of you. So yes, at the end of the day, you can say, well, so many people hate what I'm doing. So many people don't like me. I'm just going to give up. But then what are you fighting for at that point? If you're going to live your life to what everyone thinks, then that's not living at all. You're just kind of bending yourself to other people's opinion when the only one that should really matter is your moral compass and knowing that you are doing what is right in your heart.
I love that. It's super powerful, and that's helpful even just for me to hear. And, obviously all of it hasn't been bad. Project Consent has seen an incredible amount of support, winning a Webby, getting to work on White House's It's On Us campaign and plenty more. And, what does it mean for you to see the response to this organization, this project that you started?
It's been really great is not a powerful enough word for sure, but it really redefines what we're doing, because I went into this thinking maybe people will resonate with it. Maybe they won't. I don't really know. I went into it when I was 17, and now 4 years later, we've gotten over 100,000 emails from supporters and survivors saying, I love Project Consent. I love what you guys stand for. The work that you do means so much to me, because whether I myself have personally gone through it or I know somebody who had, thank you for being this voice for survivors. And to me, I think that is the most powerful part of what we do. Obviously, it's super nice to fly out to New York and go to award shows. And it's been super awesome working with Joe Biden's team. But at the end of the day, at the core of who we are, it's just helping people who have been sexually assaulted and preventing it from happening to anyone else. So the fact that anyone can find some semblance of hope and respect and empowerment from Project Consent, I think that is the foundation of what we do. And that is what means the most to me. So having that support just really makes me want to keep fighting. And it's the whole reason why we're here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know for me, there are those stories that I hold on to that spur me on to continue doing the work that I'm doing. Is there a story that sticks out in your mind that is one of those that you look back on or you think back on when you start wondering, is this thing that I'm doing, does it matter?
I think the most recent one is that I spoke at a high school, and afterwards, one of the students, I believe she was a sophomore, emailed me and said, hey, thank you for coming and talking to Project Consent. And talking to us about Project Consent. Everything you guys are doing have inspired me so much. I want to start my own club at my high school that raises awareness on sexual assault. Like, it's encouraged so many of my friends to come forward of experience that happened to them. And it was a small high school, it was a very small crowd that I talked to, but the fact that I could inspire one person to make a difference in their high school, and then hopefully those people will make a difference in, their own different groups. That's a lot of people that you're reaching. So I think what she said really stuck with me, because at the end of the day, no matter how big we get, we're only one organization. What we want to do is inspire others to take up the call as well.
I love that. I think there's, so much power in you going to speak at a high school. That's a small act of love in a sense, but the difference that can have in someone's life and what that can help inspire or spark in them, you never know what that person may go on to do, or the impact that they may have, or, how they may even double on the work that you're already doing. So I think that's incredible. And I wanted to ask you, what's kind of your biggest unrefined dream for Project Consent? Like, if take out all the different limitations or whatever there may be, like, what's your biggest dream for what you'd like to see happen through the work you're doing with Project Consent?
Something that's always really definitely resonated with me is the idea of a meditation circle for survivors to come together. You hear about these retreats, you hear about like these these giant support systems for military wives. I want something like that for survivors of sexual assault, where they can all come together to this one venue, and it's extremely supportive, it's empowering, and they all just connect with each other and know that no matter what they've gone through, they're there and they're wonderful and everything's going to be okay. So, that's just kind of like a crazy vision that I've had. And like, maybe someday it'll happen. Maybe someday we'll be able to organize that. But just something that's so healing and so moving is something I really want to see Project Consent do at some point.
I love that. And you mentioned that you're working on this podcast, OMFG Sarah. You're writing your first fictional novel. Can you tell me a little bit about these projects and the fun things that you have on the horizon?
Yeah, so outside of Project Consent, I've always been a creative soul. I've always been drawn to storytelling and media and entertainment and whatnot. So I started my blog when I was 14, and then eventually went on to write for MTV, and then left MTV to kind of start my own media company, because I thought I want to tell stories from my own voice, from my own perspective. I want to have full creative control. And podcasting was something that felt very natural to me. So I got my friend from MTV and said, hey, we should start this podcast. And so now she's my producer. And we just, we record stories that matter to us. We talk about topics that I think should be spoken about. And it's been a lot of fun just being my own boss in that aspect, and kind of like letting my creative side just take control.
Yeah, that's super cool. And, for you, what is the power of words and storytelling?
I've always found my comfort in reading. I remember growing up, I was always at the library getting more books. To this day, I still read so much, and I wish more people would read. But I think there's just so much power in just reading. I can think of 100 books that have had such a huge impact on me. I can think of sentences and paragraphs and chapters that have stuck with me through the years, that have inspired me, that have made me think. And it's, finding a good book that you like is opening another world, and you're entering that world, and you're being introduced to all these crazy new concepts that might have never been introduced to you had you not opened that book at that exact moment. So that's always what's fascinating to me.
I'm a big reader as well, and so it's always fun for me to hear other books that people are reading. So are there one or two books that you can mention that have been incredibly impactful for you recently?
Yeah, absolutely. I have always loved Donna Finch, and she wrote The Secret History and The Goldfinch. I know she just has such a great way with words, and it's just great storytelling. And I remember just like flipping through the pages, like, I don't want this book to read. Anything by Mindy Kaling, because she's one of my favorite comedians, showrunners, just all around powerful girl boss. So I have her two books, and I reread it like pretty consistently. The Big Life by Anne Choquette, from the former editor-in-chief of 17. She talked about what it was like running such a huge publication for young women and how that's impacted her. And then for sure, Girl Boss, and a lot of good books out there.
So I was just talking to a recent podcast guest, Houston Kraft, about sort of this dichotomy between what we do and who we are. And, we've talked about it a lot during this podcast. Like you're doing a lot of things and doing a lot of amazing work that's impacting the world in incredible ways. But with all that you're doing, how do you ensure that what you do doesn't define who you are?
That's a great question. I was actually just talking to a friend about this recently because on paper, I have this professional resume. I had like this bucket list and this 5-year plan. But I also make sure to take a step back from that and just ask myself, is what I'm doing really reflective of my values? Because, when it comes to my media company, I work a lot with brands and companies and sponsorships. And I always think to myself, is this something that I would want my daughter to see? Is this, when I'm promoting a product, is this something that I would use myself? Do I like their values and their mission statement? And at the end of the day, is what I'm doing something I feel really passionate about? And if the answer is anything less than like a resounding, if it's not like a giant yes, and I can't do it, because I think as important as my job is and as important as what I think I'm doing, I think what's more important is just being true to myself and knowing that I'm doing my best to not only be a good entrepreneur or businesswoman, I'm trying to be a good person.
Sara, I just want to take a few seconds before we get into the last questions to honor you. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing in the world, and more so just who you are. Like even just through this conversation, I can tell that you're a passionate soul. You're someone who sees problems, sees issues, sees things in the world that you want to fix, and you're not afraid to step into those places and bring people around you to step in and try to make a difference where you can. So thank you so much for the inspiration that you provide me and so many others.
Thank you so much. It's been great connecting with all these do-gooders around the world. It's been so good having these conversations because it makes you feel less alone. It makes you realize that there's so many good people out there trying to do their best to make the world a better place. And that just gives me so much hope for the future.
Yeah, I say it so much. Like the bigger you dream, the smaller the world gets. You're beginning to connect with others who have similar passions. They have networks, you have networks, and a smaller world just becomes easier to change. And so I'm grateful that we get to be in that community of, as you said it, do-gooders. And so last few questions that I have for you, I've kind of switched this question from what it used to be. It used to be a lot about like what you're consuming, and actually had a recent guest who was saying, I think it may be valuable for us to consume less and be present in the world more. And so more so wanted to just tweak this question to ask you, what's giving you life right now? Like what's making you feel alive? And that could be a movie, a book, whatever it is. But, what are the things giving you life right now?
I've always been very drawn to love. And I don't mean that necessarily like a romantic way. I have been always motivated by the idea of I'm going to meet this person and we're going to connect and we're going to have all these great interests and positive experiences together. So whether that's a friendship, whether that's a family that I'm going to start, hopefully like not now, but sometime later, I'm just very excited by the prospect of that. I'm so excited to meet people around the world that I'm going to fall in love with platonically, romantically, blah, 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 etc. Just knowing that there's something so strong out there, because I think love is just the greatest force. And knowing that they're going to make my day and that they're going to stick with me for the rest of my life. I'm just so, I think, moved forward by that.
That's so powerful. I think what you said, like love is one of, if not the most powerful force on this planet. And so that's definitely something that resonates with me as well. Love in a lot of ways does give me life and spurs so much of the work and the type of person that I want to be. So Sara, I've loved getting to have this conversation with you. I love getting to follow along with you online. And I know that there are probably going to be a number of other people after hearing this episode who want to follow along with you and your life and your work and just all the things. And so where can they go to do that? Where can people go to follow along with you and your work?
They can definitely follow me through my social media. I love talking with my followers. I love, whenever someone messages me about like, hey, like I've been to that place too, or, ooh, I really like that book. I love having those small, intimate connections. So definitely social media. They can always reach out to me through my email. And I also have a website that they can kind of go and see what I'm up to, and they can reach out if they like.
Perfect. Well, I'll make sure that all the links for those are put in the show notes for this episode. And Sara, thank you so much again for sharing your story and for making a difference in this world.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. You're doing great work, and I'm excited to see what you do in the future.
Today's episode was produced by me, Alex Lewis, and our awesome music was provided by Julius Tunstall. I encourage you to be on the lookout next Thursday for an awesome video that is going to be dropping on our Facebook page. I'm super excited to share it with you. If you enjoyed today's episode, I encourage you to leave a 5-star rating and review on your Apple Podcasts app. That's a big way more people can learn about the show and be impacted by these conversations. Together, let's prove that encouraging words and small acts of love can make a big difference in the lives of those around us. Until next time, you matter, you are enough. Remember these words when times get tough. Thanks for listening.